Hey, Coffee County Middle School. I'm Steve Watkins, the author of Sink or Swim, and your principal, Ms. Aaron, has asked me to talk to you guys a little bit. I just want to thank you guys for taking on Sink or Swim as your common read there at your school. It sounds like y'all had an exciting time reading it and discussing it and doing all kinds of events around it. And I can absolutely assure you I had a great time researching and writing that book. I thought I would tell you a little bit about how the book came to be, and to give you a little insight into how us writers work, especially writing historical fiction like Sink or Swim. I was working on another set of books that may be in your library called The Ghosts of War, a series I was doing for Scholastic. And in researching the Battle of Midway in World War II, which is in the Pacific, one of the most important naval sea battles in history, I stumbled across another story, and this often happens when you're doing historical research, the story of a 12-year-old kid named Calvin Graham from Texas, who stunningly somehow talked his way into a naval recruiting office and was allowed to sign up to join the Navy at the beginning of World War II, shortly after Pearl Harbor. Of course, they didn't know he was 12 years old. They may have suspected it. I'm sure they did. But he somehow got in and went to basic training and ended up serving on a battleship in the South Pacific and doing all kinds of just amazing heroic stuff. He turned 13 while he was deployed. His ship was in a number of naval sea battles in the Pacific. His ship was attacked by Japanese jets and wasn't sunk, but it was seriously damaged. And in the bombing, Calvin Graham fell 3 stories in the superstructure of the ship, was badly injured, but roused himself enough to try and, well, he didn't just try, he saved the lives of some of his other sailors. He lost some friends in that. Again, he was pretty badly injured himself, but kept going, just heroically kept going. Eventually, at age 13, the Navy found out that he was underage and kicked him out of the Navy. And so he'd lived what for many of us would be quite a full life and was done with the Navy by the time he was almost not even 14, so the age of many of you. So this story clearly just struck me as a story I'd really wanted to write. And I approached my publisher about it, and they were interested in it. But they also thought, well, there's something called life rights. And of course, Calvin Graham's family owns the life rights to his story. And for this reason and that reason, my publisher didn't want to get involved with that. So they said, well, why don't we just flip the script? And why don't you tell the story, but fictionalize it, tell it in a different way? And so I thought, well, okay, I'm a writer, I can do that. And so I thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. And I grew up on the East Coast in eastern North Carolina and knew a lot about the Outer Banks. And I thought, well, I knew a lot of at the beginning of World War II, there was a lot of German U-boats that were attacking ships, transport ships, and passenger ships all up and down the eastern seaboard. And a lot of it happened right off the coast there in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And so I started researching that and found out, just a wealth of information about what had happened there. And so the story transplanted itself to the Outer Banks, or started there anyway. As you guys know now that you've read the book, of course it starts. But I made up the story that starts the Sink or Swim, but it's based on some true events that actually happened to some fisher people in the Outer Banks that I've discovered through my research. And one of the joys for me of doing this kind of writing is in the research. I read just countless books and contemporary newspaper accounts and magazine articles. I looked at old training videos from the 1940s for what Calvin Graham, or the Calvin Graham character, of course, in Colton in Sink or Swim went through. And of course, I had to have all my details down cold to be able to effectively tell the story, of the young man who serves in Sink or Swim fighting those German U-boats. And along the way, one of the great delights for me is just how much I got to learn along the way. And I can't tell you how many days I spent just kind of going down what we writers call the rabbit hole of research, you know, looking for one thing and then getting fascinated by 100 other things in writing the story. So that's kind of how the story came to be. And, you know, once you're telling the story, you're always looking for more and more and more of the authenticating details to make sure that everything you're writing fits the historical record. Even though it's fiction, there's, you know, you're not going to make up the Donald Duck Navy, for example. You're not going to make up how long the U-boats, you know, could, you know, be under the surface, or, you know, how fast they could go, or the idea of the wolf packs, which they, you know, used as a, you know, as an attack, you know, strategy, you know, for attacking the Allied ships and so forth. So all of that, you know, came from the research and was just absolutely fascinating to me. And hopefully it was as interesting to you to read as it was for me to write. So that's what I do as a writer of historical fiction. I've written other things as well. You know, one of the things that motivates me, and one of the things that I really hope you guys got out of this, is that idea of heroism. And not just heroism, but living your life in such a way, even at a very young age, that you're looking for those opportunities, not just to serve. Service is absolutely important. You know, it's what binds us to one another. You know, it's looking for opportunities to help one another, to serve one another, but also to take that next step too. Not, you know, where you get to be a hero, where you're looking for those opportunities to be a hero. I think too many times people sell younger folks like yourselves way too short. Way too short. Think you're just too self-absorbed. You're all about your cell phones or what's on TV or your video games. But, you know, what I've seen with young people is, yeah, I could certainly get into that stuff too, but is a real strong desire to serve, you know, to find that opportunity to be a hero. And so I thought this story, telling this story, you know, is just a good reminder. It's certainly a reminder to me. You know, at any age, you should be looking for those opportunities to be a hero, those opportunities to serve, and I'm hoping it was a reminder to you guys as well, or an affirmation of things that you're already doing. And one of the things I also hope comes out of this discussion is sharing that. I think a lot of times people serve in all kinds of ways, and letting other people in on that, knowing what they're doing, what the opportunities are to serve, opportunities to be a hero. You know, which of course comes in all manner, shape, or form. You know what's out there. You don't, of course, have to serve on a sub chaser in the frigid North Atlantic. You don't have to be out in the Pacific being attacked by, you know, Japanese planes and save lives on a ship to be a hero. There's so many different ways that we can do that every day. Taking care of the kid in the seat next to us in school who's having a rough day, who maybe, you know, has a loved one in the hospital. You know, these are ways to serve and be heroic as well. So anyway, those are the things I'm hoping you guys might be thinking about and perhaps getting out of this. And of course, I'm just hoping too, it's just a rockin' good, interesting story, but one that's also recognizes that, you know, service, heroism, it comes with great sacrifice too, and that we don't ever take for granted or look too lightly on those who've lost their lives, you know, who've sacrificed, you know, made that the absolute sacrifice, you know, in service to others, and that we respect them, you know, that we appreciate them, and we never leave them out of our thoughts. Anyway, great you guys are getting to read that book. I hope you have a great year, a great time in middle school, and look forward to writing more books for you guys and you guys reading them. Take care.